as India continues to pile diplomatic pressure, 84 Indians are still stranded in Iraq. So far, 2 Indian nurses have been rescued from the conflict zone. Times now getting you the latest from the ground in Iraq from 3 key locations. Right now, we are joined by Tony Cheng, senior journalist joining us from Erbil in Iraq. Thanks for joining us tonight, Tony. Firstly, tell us the situation on the ground from where you are at Erbil.
Well, in Erbil, things are very secure, and that's, I think, again, one of the interesting things about this conflict. We've seen Iraqi Kurdistan remain very solid, very secure, despite the fact that we're just 100 kilometers away from Mosul, the second largest town in Iraq, and the town that was seized by the ISIL forces so quickly. Now, there is still fighting going on those front lines. We understand that those Sunni militants are still throwing mortars across to the Peshmerga lines, the Kurdish fighters. One was killed last night, several more injured. But the Kurds, I think, have shown during this conflict that they, unlike the Iraqi army, are able to hold back these sustained attacks. In fact, they've made very significant gains, namely the oil-rich city of Kirkuk. In contrast, the Iraqi army fled all the way back to the very edges of Baghdad. However, over the last few days, we've really seen them start to hold their lines now, and in some cases start to push the militants back. At this stage, we don't know how much those militant forces are the Islamic, the ISIL forces coming in from Syria, or whether they're also being joined by Sunni militants within Iraq, people who are dissatisfied with the government of Nouri al-Maliki. And nonetheless, at this stage, they are being held back from Baghdad, and Baghdad, unlike what we were talking about a week ago when we thought it might fall, it seems to be much more solid now.
You are saying in fact, Baghdad and surrounding areas are much more solid now. But we are also getting reports of now American drones flying over Baghdad to defend U.S. military advisors and diplomats as Iraqi forces resist the ISIS.
Indeed, and that is part of the support that the government and the army is now getting. We heard a few days ago when John Kerry arrived, the first contingent of 40 US soldiers, or advisors, we should say, had arrived. They've stressed, the United States has stressed that they will not be involved in any combat operations. They're here to advise tactically and logistically, but they are going to be supported with drones, and some of those are already operating over Iraqi airspace. We understand some of them are equipped with Hellfire missiles as well, something the Iraqis are very short of. They're very short of air support. They had initially asked the United States for air support for backup, but the United States, I think, is giving it in qualified terms at this stage. We don't know exactly what their involvement is going to be, but with the arrival of those advisors and an enormous recruitment from within the Shia community, both in the south of Iraq and within Baghdad, they're getting more volunteers into the armed forces, and they are slowly starting to push back. Although it must be noted that the ISIS forces have made very significant gains in the last couple of days, particularly along the Syrian border and very close to the border with Jordan as well. So they do appear to be in full control of that western border with Syria, and they can now move resources backwards and forwards at will.
Tony, what about Tikrit? We are hearing that thousands of soldiers are now marching towards Tikrit to reclaim that area after it was taken over by the ISIS.
Yes, I think that's a serious concern. We've seen both from video posted by ISIS on various websites, but also from some independent confirmation, although it is still very hard to get into a lot of areas. But there is a very strong suspicion that several massacres have taken place on both sides. It should be noted, there was a report a couple of days ago of Sunni prisoners who are being moved by government troops, near just, I think, 19, just under 20, who also appeared to have been executed at some point. The government soldiers saying they were attacked, but certainly there is very little quarter being given by both sides. I think the understanding is here it's almost a scorched earth policy, and it is very disturbing for anyone getting trapped up in those areas. There are still, remember, 39 Indians being held hostage in the city of Mosul, just about 100 kilometers from here. We've just seen the release of 1,000 Chinese workers who were trapped in the northern city of Samura, where they were being employed working on a power plant. So there are people getting caught up up in this. Some are managing to get out. Some are still being held, however. So it's still a very precarious situation, and I think everyone rather unsure about what the future holds.
Well, that's right. About 84 Indians, as we speak, Tony, are still stranded. Indian efforts, of course, are on to get them back to India. Meanwhile, also some reports coming in, if you could confirm the same, of more Indians being stranded in Karbala, where they are being held at their workplace against their will.
We've heard those reports. Approximately 250 Indians who we think may be held in Kabul, but we cannot confirm at this stage. Again, the situation very dangerous on the ground. It's very hard to get into these areas. We understand that 39 Indians in Mosul are still safe and secure, although they are being kidnapped at this stage. It seems that they are being held by ISIS fighters, which is something of a concern. The Indian government saying it's working very hard to get them out. But we have seen slow changes in this situation. I think as ISIS moved down from the north so quickly, many people got caught out. It is a concern, but I think the advice from many governments being that if you are caught out, just sit tight and we will come and get you if possible. And that's what they were able to do with the Chinese workers who were trapped. As I understand it, there are 10,000 Indian workers currently in Iraq, but most of those centered in the south, around the oil-rich fields of Basra, and those are not under any immediate threat at the moment. So I think most people will be relatively secure, no need to evacuate at this stage. But again, foreign governments reviewing these situations on a daily basis.
Right, and you were also talking about the Syrian and Jordanian border. We are getting reports at this point of time that Syrian rebels have launched a counter-offensive today to reclaim part of that territory.
Absolutely. We understand the Iraqi government is pushing very hard to take back the city of Tikrit. Yesterday afternoon it was reported that a couple of helicopters flew some troops into the stadium in the town where they set up a bridge point. There has been continued fighting overnight and today. So they do appear to be holding on to that ground. Again, at this stage it's very hard to tell exactly what's going on because that is well behind the front lines. The front line actually less than 100 kilometers outside Baghdad at a city called Baqaba. But if the Iraqi army can get back into Tikrit, can re-establish that point, it will prove a pivoting point, I think, to be able to get back other gains that they've lost over the last couple of weeks. However, a lot of the young militia fighters who are coming in are inexperienced. They're facing ISIS fighters, many of whom are coming from Syria, where they have been battle hardened. So it is going to be a very tough fight. And again, I think the key being, at this stage, we don't know how much support ISIS has from the Sunni tribes in the Iraqi north and the west. If they have considerable support, then this will be a very long and protracted fight. If not, then they could be pushed out relatively quickly.
All right, thanks a lot. Tony Cheng there, senior journalist, joining us live from Erbil in Iraq. Thanks for that, Tony.